gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash, the smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
And say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You
It's
just can't
crap.
say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. The Bell Hotel controversy continues, and guess what? One of the judges who made the decision was a member of the Labour Party for 28 years. He was also the chairman of a think tank, the Fabian Society. Listen, he may well have been totally independent. He may well have made the decision entirely on the law. That's what he would argue. Certainly, we're not suggesting otherwise. We are simply saying that he was the chairman of the Labour-linked Fabian Society for a year, and the Home Secretary also previously served as a chair of its commission. Just put that information there for you. Let me know your reaction to that. 0344 499 1000 on the Bell Hotel decision. Some of the arguments I've been looking into, honestly, they're just astonishing. The Home Office lawyers argued that the human rights of those in the Bell Hotel were more important than the people who live in Epping. That is what they thought. That is what your own government thinks. Also, Queen Elizabeth, was she a Remainer? The monarch wanted Britain to remain in the EU. It's better to stick with the devil you know, she allegedly said. Reform UK takes a shock 15-point lead over Labour. I'm not shocked, as Farage dreams of winning power, says one of the main papers. And also the Conservatives have called for an investigation into Angela Rayner over her tax affairs, 3 homes Ange, and where she's designated to live. We'll talk about digital ID. And a council, Essex County Council, offering support to staff unsettled by St George's flags, unsettled by the flag of this country. JD Vance as well, the Vice President, saying we should push back against the crazies offended by the English flag. If only Essex Council would take note of that. I want your thoughts on all of this morning. As always, I will fit in as many callers, voice notes, texts, tweets, etc., all of it between now and 12:30. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's have a conversation together today about the state of this country here on Talk. Well, the Immigration Minister, Dame Angela Eagle, has been talking about the Bell Hotel decision. It's all over the papers today. Lots of people want to get their voices heard. If you're one of them, be sure to give me a shout. This is what the Immigration Minister, Labour's Angela Eagle, has said about it.
Well, nobody wants to close the Bell Hotel and all other asylum hotels more than me, and we have pledged that we are going to do that by the end of the Parliament. Today's judgment allows us to do it in a planned and managed way so that we can get the system running and make sure that we can exit hotels for once and for all.
Nobody wants to close the Bell Hotel more than me, says Labour's Angela Eagle. Do you believe her? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Chris Philp is the Shadow Home Secretary. This is what he had to say.
So the Epping hotel judgment has just come in, and it shows the government, the Labour government, using the courts against the British people. They even brazenly said in court that the rights of the illegal immigrants in that hotel were more important than the rights of local people in Epping. And that is an absolutely disgraceful thing for the government to say, and shows whose side they are on. Let's not forget these hotels were being closed down in the 9 months before the last election. If that had continued, there wouldn't even be any hotels open right now. But the reason these hotels are still being used is because the government cancelled the Rwanda deterrent just days before it was due to start. And as a result, the numbers illegally crossing the Channel this year have been the worst ever. This weak Labour government is unwilling to take the steps needed to get our borders under control, and cases like today's judgment and the hotel in Epping are the results of this Labour government's failures.
Chris Philp there, the Shadow Home Secretary. What do you think about this? 0344 499 1000. Let's speak to Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown MP. He is the Conservative for the North Cotswolds, also the Chairman of the Public Affairs Committee. Geoffrey, thanks for joining me this morning. What is your reaction to this ruling?
Well, I think it's not surprising, I have to say, Peter. Good morning, by the way. Great to be on your show. It's not surprising because what the Supreme Court was asked to do yesterday was to decide whether the interim injunction applied for by the Epping Council was to remain in place until the full court hearing. And it really would have been, as the legal term, a order of precedence to try and get the asylum seekers out for a few weeks. And then if the judgment in the Supreme Court had gone in favour of the asylum seekers, to get them back again. So I think this was almost an inevitable but sad judgment for the people of Epping. And I must say, in their situation, I do feel very sorry for them. I think the other thing to say is, as Chris Philp has just said on your programme, the judge was using Article 8 of the ECHR Convention to say that asylum seekers must be given proper treatment in this country. And that does mean that the rights of ordinary British people are being overridden in favour of the asylum seekers in this area, I feel.
What do you make about some of the revelations that are coming out this morning that the judge who ruled migrants can stay in an Essex hotel, this is Lord Justice Bean, there's no suggestion he's acted anything other than impartially, but factually he was chairman of the Labour-linked Fabian Society for a year. Yvette Cooper was previously chair of its commission. He was also a member of the Labour Party for at least 28 years before he became a judge. He was treasurer of the Society of Labour Lawyers, which describes itself as a think tank and affiliated socialist society, which provides legal and policy advice to the Labour Party. Do you have concerns about that?
I do. I think if I was one of those enraged Epping residents, I would be hopping mad about this, because there is a perceived bias there. And if I had been this judge, I would have excused myself from the trial and asked another judge who didn't have an interest in this matter to take it over. And I hope the Lady Chief Justice, when it comes to listing which Supreme Court judges will hear the full hearing in October, will make sure that he is not one of them.
What do you think happens in October? There are quite a number of lawyers saying that there's no way that this can be won now.
I think it's that the issue will be as to whether a planning matter can be overridden by a national policy. And I think that is what the Supreme Court has to decide. The trouble is, if you ride roughshod, and I'm a chartered surveyor, through planning laws, where does this start and where does it end? So I think the Supreme Court judges have got a very difficult job to do. I hope they will find in favour of the illegality of these residents in Epping. But I think it is going to be very difficult.
Angela Eagle, I should say. We are talking about Angela Rayner later on. But Dame Angela Eagle is the immigration minister. She says no one wants to close migrant hotels more than her. Do you believe her?
Well, I mean, the simple answer to that question is Labour have been in power now for what, 15, 16 months? The number of people in hotels has gone up, not down. Prior to the election, we had halved, admittedly from a higher base, halved the number of people in hotels. So we were going in the right direction. If she really meant what she said, why hasn't she taken more absolute decisive action to achieve that?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. And also, my point would be, if a court tells you to close one hotel, what about the 200 other hotels? If you can't close one hotel in over a year, well, what hope is there to close 200 of them by the end of the Parliament? That's the argument I would put to Labour.
Exactly. I mean, I think they're in a real muddle over this. And if they do have to close these 200 plus hotels, where is everybody going to go? There's sort of vague talk that they're going to go into houses in multiple occupation. But where are these houses in multiple occupation? And it seems that we, in our desperate way of wanting to give these asylum seekers a comfortable way of life, wouldn't house them in fairly basic warehouses or that sort of thing. So I just don't know, if they move them out of hotels, where they're going to put them.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Let me ask you about a couple of other stories that are around today as well. Angela Rayner and her tax affairs. The Conservatives are writing to the Standards Commissioner about this. She has claimed, she's Housing Secretary, of course, she's avoided £40,000 in stamp duty on a second home in East Sussex by removing her name from the deeds of another property in Greater Manchester. Again, no suggestion she's done anything illegal, but there is that awful phrase that we remember from the expenses scandal 15 years ago, within the rules. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a bit like the judge, isn't it? It's the perception of all of this. And she is, what, a heartbeat away, perhaps in some people's minds, of being the next Prime Minister. And here she is for the second time, because we all remember just before the election, she got into trouble with her capital gains tax on one of her properties, whether it was a principal residence or not. Now, I think the real problem for her here is maybe not that she's done anything illegal, but if she's declaring as her main residence this flat in Hove in the south of England, in Sussex, how can she actually be representing her constituents properly? Because she doesn't have, it appears, a property in her own constituency. And indeed, many people are reporting that she's never seen in her own constituency. So I think there is a real problem there. And I think the voters of her constituency will want to think about that very carefully when it comes to who they vote for in the next election.
Jeffrey, there's been quite a number of polls recently. Now there's a record lead for Reform UK. This is BMG, a big polling company, that puts Reform UK at 35%, 15 points clear of Labour and 18 points clear of your party, third on 17%. Is Reform unstoppable?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, they've had a good run. It's been the summer season where the weather's been good. The number of illegal migrants crossing in boats and lorries over the channel has been at a record level. They have actually communicated their desire to stop that very well. But I think over a period of time, we'll find that they're going to get into more and more difficulties. Apart from anything else, all of the policies that they're proposing, which involve an economic cost, such as the second child rule that they want to abolish, they haven't said how they will pay for that. And we will not announce anything unless we are fairly certain how we would pay for it in government. So I think as time goes on, you'll find that we will be making sensible and believable and reasonable policies. And I think Reform, other than immigration, will find other policies quite difficult to actually come up with a sensible answer.
Jeffrey, thank you. That's Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown there, Conservative MP for the North Cotswolds, also Chairman of the Public Affairs Committee. Thank you to Samantha, who has messaged in to say, Peter, you love to tell us that Talk is the station of free speech and that it is the viewers' channel as well as yours. But I have been texting in for weeks asking you the question, has our judiciary been infiltrated by the Labour Party? In short, is our democracy corrupt? Samantha, I haven't seen this before. We get lots of messages all the time. We can't read out everybody's, but I'm happy to read out yours. Has our judiciary been infiltrated by the Labour Party? I think there are many members of the judiciary who have Labour sympathies. I am not impugning the reputation of Lord Justice Bean, but factually, he has been chairman of the Fabian Society, that is a Labour-linked society. He's also, Yvette Cooper has previously served as chairwoman of its commission. He was a member of the Labour Party for 28 years. So people will draw their own conclusions for that. It is the perception, as Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown correctly says. Is our democracy corrupt? I think there is a lot less corruption in this country than many others, but people just do not trust the establishment in this society. There are so many viewers and listeners who get in touch with me every single day who say that they just don't trust the political class, they don't trust the judiciary, they don't think it's independent, they don't think it's acting in the best interest of the people. So Samantha, I think a lot of people will find your fears very well founded. Text me in again and we'll look out for Samantha's messages, and if you've further thoughts, Samantha, we'll see if we can read those out later on today. I want to speak to Jake in Staffordshire, first call of the show today. Jake's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Jake, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good morning, mate. Great show as always.
Thank you.
I'm a lorry driver, right? So I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning delivering to farms. Now, I could speak to you all morning. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. But I just, like many other people, you get up in the morning, you do your work, and sometimes, I'm away. I've got a 7-month-old little girl and a missus at home, and I'm away from my family for up to 5 days sometimes, out, staying out 5 days a week. And I get home, when I'm home, and the very precious little time that I have with my family, and then, I can't do many things because we haven't got much money left after all the bills. We can't go out and do all these nice things that the parliamentary elite can do because it doesn't bother them. And I'm sure, like many other people, I just sit here and I think, how is this fair?
Yeah.
That the people who are the backbone of the country are the ones who are getting absolutely annihilated the most.
And you're not asking for a huge. You're
not
actually not asking for a huge amount, Jake. You're not saying you want to do loads. You just want to go out for a meal every now and again. Maybe take your kids to the cinema, something like that.
Exactly.
And that's beyond the reach of so many people these days. And the thing is that Rachel Reeves is going to put up taxes. I know she is in the autumn time, and it's going to make life even more difficult. So I'm not surprised you're asking these questions and saying, hold on a second, I'm getting up at, middle of the night here, I'm working hard, you're one of the grafters who's one of the backbone, part of the backbone of this country. I'm not surprised you're asking these questions, Jake. I'd be angry too.
It's like I'm from one of the migrant hotels that you probably heard about in Cannock. I drive past that all of the time. Like I drove past it this morning at 8 o'clock this morning. I drove past it and I just sat there and I thought, why do I bother? Why do I bother to do all these hours all week away from my family, then barely get by? We're just, we're one of them jam families, just about managing.
Yeah.
And go past this hotel and I think, why am I bothering doing all of this when them lot are sat there living the life of Riley?
What really annoys me about the Bell Hotel, Jake, is that as part of the legal argument, the Home Office lawyers, who are paid for by you and me, paid for by your taxes, paid for by my taxes, said that the human rights of the people in the Bell Hotel, the asylum seekers, are more important than the people who live in Epping. And I just think, isn't it about time our government started standing up for us?
That isn't going to happen with this government, unfortunately. And like I say, we don't live too far away from one of these migrant hotels.
Yeah.
I've got a 7-month-old little girl, and unless things dramatically change, I'm very scared for the future of what she's going to have.
Well, Jake,
it makes me think, do I want to be here?
Well, I wish you well, and I wish your family well, Jake. And listen, thanks for your call. That. I think you speak for an awful lot of people today who are thinking, where is the fairness here? Where on earth is the government standing up for its own people? Because it's not. It's standing up for the asylum seekers. That was part of the legal argument. That is what they wrote to the court, and they said that the human rights of those who live in the Bell Hotel are more important than the people of Epping. Those are what government lawyers said. So straightforward. They just don't care. There's Jake, grafting, working all the hours God sends, wants to provide for his baby, wants to provide for his family, doing the right thing, doing all the right things, doing everything that he should be doing, obeying the law, paying his taxes, working hard, getting up in the middle of the night, driving his lorry. Where's the benefit for him? Where's the payback? What's the incentive for him to do the right thing? What's the incentive for all of us to do the right thing when those who don't do the right thing, who come here illegally, who give nothing, nada, not a cent to this economy, get to live in a hotel? It's just not fair. It's not about racism. It's not about Little Englandism. It's not even about flying a flag, which is part of it too. And I've no objection to anybody who flies the flag of their country. But the point is, it's just straightforwardly, as Jake said, it's not fair. He said it far better than I could. Thank you to Kevin, who says, good morning, Peter. They built the Nightingale hospitals with all amenities very quickly. Is this not an option for the migrants? Jane says, the government are a load of liars. The only thing I want to hear from them is when they announce the general election. Bob and Chiswick says, Peter, I'm worried that Starmer knows he has no chance of being re-elected, and as punishment the British people, he has invoked his own Nero decree to destroy everything beyond repair. Zoe Price in Wiltshire says, why do we keep calling them asylum seekers? They're not seeking asylum. They're economic migrants who are only here because of the handouts. Zoe, they are seeking asylum, but most of them are economic migrants. You're absolutely right. The two are, as far as I'm concerned, basically interchangeable. There are some people who do want asylum, but and they'll apply for asylum, but the majority of them anyway are economic migrants, and we should be very realistic about that as well. The end of this parliament seems to be Labour's new catchphrase, says Mike. John says Geoffrey Clifton Brown needs to remember the Tories spent 450 billion quid on lockdowns with no cost-benefit analysis. They cannot be trusted with the economy and the truth, says John in Weston-super-Mare. And David says, from Hyams Park, says, just caught the end of the last chat there. That was Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown, David. Another Conservative had 14 years to do what? Another Conservative joker to say a reformer having a good run makes him an idiot, if you ask me. Great show, Peter. Well, thank you, David. And this is the front page of the I newspaper. Reform takes a shock 15-point lead over Labour as Farage dreams of taking power. I don't think that's a shock at all. I think that's a perfectly logical thing to happen in the current atmosphere. Labour are on 20, the Conservatives are on 17%, the Lib Dems on 13%, and the Greens on 7% in that poll. We'll talk about that and more with Luke Gittos, one of my favourite guests. He's a lawyer and writer, and Amy Fisher, the former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. She's also a former Home Office advisor, and I'll be really interested to hear what she has to say about the Bell Hotel. Stay with us here on Talk.
who effectively told us they are scared for their children's safety in the area, and they are worried about what the next steps are and what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't quite know the ramifications of today's hearing yet. We get to see how it progresses and what that appeal might mean for the future. But I mean, the fact the government is allowed to appeal, that could have, if that wasn't the case, then it would effectively tear apart the whole hotel system and leave the whole asylum hotel system in tatters.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including Linda, who says Labour say you can't negotiate with the Taliban or terrorists for deportation, but they negotiated with the IRA, who killed UK politicians on their own land. You're right, Linda, and the fact that the National Security Advisor is Jonathan Powell, who's made a career of going around the world talking about how he did, in fact, negotiate with the IRA. Karen says, I've just listened to Jake. Is there any way of sending him a bit of money for him and his family to have a day out? I haven't got much, but perhaps a few listeners could chip in. Best wishes, says Karen. Karen, we've just got to be really careful about that kind of thing. I know exactly how you feel. A lot of people feel that way. And listen, we'll have a chat with you maybe if you send in your number. Your number actually hasn't come up on my screen, but if you send in your number, I'll maybe give you a ring, or one of the producers will give you a ring after the programme. We can have a chat about that. We're just going to be really careful about that sort of thing, because it was just for Ofcom reasons, for regulation reasons, which is a bit sad. But Jake is a really good guy, and he spoke, I think, for so many people. Thank you to another person who says, I hate this government and want them out. So this is in no way defending them, but could you clarify exactly what the government's legal representative said? Ian Collins said their arguments didn't actually say that migrants have more rights than local residents. Well, they used the human rights defence within the written argument. In fact, we have a lawyer sitting in front of us here, Luke Gittos. I'll come to that in just a second. But first of all, I want to play a voice note from Steve, who wants to talk about Epping. This is what Steve has to say.
Hi, Peter. Steve from Portsmouth. Regarding the ruling yesterday, this was meant to be a hearing between the council and the hotel chain group over a failed planning procedure. Why did the Home Office get involved? Why were they allowed to get involved? And why did things like the government's asylum policy or the rights of illegal immigrants, why was that even considered at that hearing? It was simply a planning permission case.
Well, we have a lawyer with us, a lawyer and writer, Luke Gittos. Great to have you here. And Amy Fisher is a former Home Office Special Advisor, so I don't think we could have two better people on the debate desk this morning. Luke, maybe you can answer some of those questions that Steve has.
Yeah, sure. So Steve's point is effectively the point that was made by the High Court judge, the judge who's now been successfully appealed. And he said that this was a planning issue, a relatively straightforward one, and for that reason refused the Home Secretary intervener status. In other words, refused the Home Secretary the right to intervene in the case and become a party. Because he said, look, this is about whether there's been a change of use of that hotel, and if there's been a change of use, is it the kind of change of use that requires planning permission? That's a simple question. He weighed in the balance the other considerations, the wider public policy considerations, but said that the most important one was local planning law. Now, the Court of Appeal have come out and said that that's been appealed, that the injunction that he granted was wrongly granted, and really gave him quite a kicking when it comes to his decision. I mean, it's quite a brutal, it's only a 14-page judgment, but almost every paragraph is devoted to picking apart the decision of the High Court. I do think this raises an interesting question going forward. I'm not a planning lawyer, but the judge in the High Court case found that the company that owned the hotel had deliberately, not covertly, but deliberately bypassed the need to apply for planning permission. They effectively knew that this would cause public outcry and decided therefore not to make the application to Epping, to the council. And so what happens now when an injunction that prevents unlawful use of a hotel, or potentially unlawful use of a hotel, if an injunction can't be granted to deal with that potential unlawfulness, what's to stop any hotel in the country just ignoring planning law, getting away with it for as long as they possibly can, in the knowledge that they're not going to have an injunction granted against them? I think that's an open question when it comes to this area of law, which is very important. Can I just also the law is one issue here, and it's important that we understand it properly. But politically, the point here is that the people of Epping have been treated with utter contempt throughout these proceedings, and it's that contempt that led that company not to seek the views of local people when making this kind of decision. It's that contempt that led Epping Borough Council to not properly enforce their own planning laws, and it's that contempt that's led the Home Secretary to effectively bulldoze in and spend taxpayers' money fighting this injunction. People of Epping are rightly outraged that this decision has been taken totally over their own heads, and what I think people don't understand in Westminster, and what lawyers like me tend to not understand, is this problem around asylum is a symptom of something very deep. People are rejecting the idea that law should be made over their heads and without any consideration for their concerns. These are local people who care about their community. They care that a big group of people who have been unvetted are living in their community, and they're not happy with it. The idea that they can have laws cited at them, that people can appeal to the Human Rights Act. We'll come on to the place of human rights because it is complicated.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that actually in a minute or two. Maybe we've plenty of time, so let's talk about the human rights aspect and actually what this text message has said as well. But I just want to read you what the hotel company has said through their solicitors. This is through Richard Buxton's solicitors, represents Samani Hotels, which owns the Bell Hotel. Our clients realise that they have been caught in the middle of a much wider debate on the treatment of asylum seekers, and respectfully ask that members of the public understand that the Bell Hotel has simply been providing a contracted service that the government requires. Nothing to do with us, Gov.
That's exactly what that was. It was trying to whitewash over the point, Luke, you've just made, which is that they knowingly didn't apply for a change of use permit. I mean, so that I think that's a sort of PR stunt on the behalf of the hotel company that's pretty easy to see through. I mean, I think one of the other, there's no I could add to anything Luke has just said. I agree with it entirely. So for a couple of points which add even further complicating, muddying the water still further, is the Home Office lawyers themselves did not make their life any easier right from the very outset. A couple of weeks ago, when the injunction was first being heard, the Home Office basically messed up its own legal strategy and didn't try and get themselves... hard to believe. This is what I mean. When I was listening to the news, I wasn't just kind of shuddering at the enormity of the policy issue. I could so easily remember, oh my God, what dealing with Home Office lawyers was like, and they messed up their own legal course of action back then at the initial hearing 2.5 weeks ago by just basically not getting their act and their argument together, because somehow they just hadn't realised the ramifications for literally the rest of the Home Offices, the government's asylum policy as to where to put any of these folk. The other bit that I think as far as I have understood it, that has particularly angered people out in Epping is that this hotel has been being used since sort of almost pre-COVID or just into COVID, so for a number of years. But the issue is that over time it's changed from being women and young children to being quite a lot of young men.
138 single men. Yeah.
Some of whom will almost certainly be undocumented, i.e. we have no idea really necessarily where they've come from, if they may have any criminal records, and the hotel is located not too far away from a local school. So I think that's kind of an important aspect when the argument sort of becomes, oh, well, other people, bluntly put, well, other people of Epping are somehow inherently racist because they've been all these protests about not wanting the asylum seekers. I think that's far too simplistic a way of looking at it, where for local people, they're sort of worried about this change that has happened in a hotel that hasn't taken responsibility for what it was being used for. And when local people are trying to raise legitimate concerns, they're essentially being told, well, no, because we're just going to pass the law over your head anyway, and you've essentially got to suck it up.
Thank you to Maureen in Stamford, who says, listening to Jake earlier on made me feel so sad. It resonates with me. I have a son and a daughter-in-law with a 4-year-old daughter. They both work full-time, and yet they have to think twice about having a meal out or taking their daughter on a day out for a treat. They cannot afford one night in a hotel. What incentive is there for hard-working people when their taxes are paying for illegal immigrants to live a life of luxury? It is soul-destroying, says Maureen in Stamford. You can just absolutely see, I don't know if you heard Jake's call earlier, and what Maureen is saying there is very, very similar sentiment. Away from the legal arguments, which we'll talk about a bit more, I think, in a second. I definitely want to get into the human rights angle with Luke after the break. But Amy, the question I ask is, so many people ask me, and I ask too, where is the incentive to do the right thing? We heard Jake, who's a lorry driver, he gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning, he works 5 days a week, he's away from his baby, he's away from his family, and then he just says, well, actually, once the bills go, I've no money left. But I see people in hotels. Maureen talking about her son and daughter-in-law with a 4-year-old daughter. They just want to go to the cinema. They just want to have a nice meal out. No, we're not talking about the Ivy here. We're talking about, you know, just a local restaurant. And there are so many people who say, what's in this for me anymore? I'm paying all this tax, I'm working really hard, I can't afford to do even simple, nice things, yet there are people who've contributed nothing who are getting everything.
Well, I think that is one of the sort of unfairness around it all is one of the most difficult bits in this whole conversation, because I think that most people are pretty decent. They don't, you know, no one's wanting asylum seekers to sort of be homeless or out on the streets, because that's the whole part of it. The government has a legal duty to make sure asylum seekers are not sort of destitute or without a roof. And I think most people understand that. And indeed, a lot of people in Epping are saying, you know, look, we're not saying they shouldn't have any support or help or anywhere to live. We're just saying how it's being done wrong in this circumstance. It seems so unfair and so egregious. And the unfairness point is exacerbated when some people have been protesting and breaking the law, and that is just wrong. An awful lot of people, as I understand it, have been protesting because they have very legitimate concerns about this place, and then the very people to represent them, indeed Epping Council, made this application, which has now just been completely torn up, you know, by a High Court judge. So it's not even that people, you know, life is difficult and expensive at the moment, and so people see that some other folk who haven't necessarily been here long seem to be having an easier life in some way. So that's one part of it. But then also that they're just not being listened to, as Luke said, and even when somebody, in this case Epping Council, has tried to advocate for what are the concerns of people within literally its constituency, they're essentially steamrolled, I think was the word you used, steamrolled by the Home Secretary and the government.
We've got to go to a break. We'll get more from Luke in a second on the human rights angle. I'll ask him straight after the break about that. I want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000. Get your calls and voice notes in, and we'll put them to Luke and Amy. Stay with us on the debate desk here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Quite a few legal questions coming in. We wanted absolutely understand the fundamentals of this. Kevin says, Angela Eagle says, nobody wants to close the Bell Hotel and other hotels more than her. That's the Immigration Minister, Dame Angela Eagle. We heard that clip a bit earlier on. Note, she doesn't say nobody wants to end illegal migration more than her. Another person says, Geoffrey Clifton Brown sounds like a voice from a bygone age. They just don't get it or are choosing to ignore the reality of the situation in the Conservative Party. Chris says, based on the court decision, can I build on any land without permission and simply claim the property will house illegal migrants? I don't think that's right, Luke, necessarily. Tongue perhaps in cheek from that viewer there.
Yeah, I mean, so you asked about the status of human rights.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this actually, because as I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong, so this person, let me just read out this text again. Ian Collins said their arguments didn't actually say migrants have more rights than local residents. Also, did the ruling not mean that the government have a right to appeal the decision to close the hotel, not actually overturn the decision? So my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that in the written arguments that the Home Office lawyers put forward, they said that the human rights of the migrants, the asylum seekers, trump those in the local area, but that wasn't made in court. It was just a written argument, and actually the judges in their judgment said that was not something that they would hold sway with, but it was an attempt to make that argument anyway.
Yes, so the Home Office appealed to the Home Secretary's duty under the Human Rights Act, which is a piece of UK law, excuse me, which places an obligation on ministers and any public office holder in the UK to pay due deference to the European Convention on Human Rights. And so the Home Secretary is under a duty to balance the rights of migrants against the rights of the local residents in Epping. You know, they referred to that duty in court, the counsel for the Home Office saying that the relevant public interests are not equal. So that's where I think that idea that the immigrants' rights are worth more in some way, you know, that was part of the argument. The Court of Appeal, though, did say that argument around the hierarchy of rights was not particularly attractive, and it certainly wasn't the reason that the decision was made. So human rights play a role in this case. I mean, as they play a role in almost every case involving public law in this country. It's a very pervasive piece of legislation, because, and especially when it comes to institutions like the Home Office, because they're public bodies that are required under the UK law to respect the decisions of the European Convention on Human Rights. But it certainly wasn't decisive in this case.
Sorry, go ahead.
The political corollary point to that is, well, doesn't this just show the bonkersness of the Home Office and its lawyers? Because let's be really clear, whilst the lawyers would have drafted their argument, there is no way that document wasn't reviewed by ministers, the Home Secretary, political special advisor,
Attorney General, probably.
So the fact that the kind of none of them, sort of actual politicians, didn't look at the language that the lawyers were proposing, you know, this whole bit about whose rights are weighted more, and how none of them had an instinctive reaction of like, that's not the argument. That's not the argument we should be making. Now, the fact the judge then disregarded it in his decision, it's sort of, well, thank goodness there. My point is the Home Office should have enough political sense, common sense, and due regard for public feeling in this case to not have even attempted to make it part of their own argument. Do you see what I mean? The Home Office is just completely misstepping, either, as they say, in steps they've played wrongly with regards to their actual kind of court strategy, and then just so tone deaf in terms of its own argument and language it's trying to put together. And as I say, we're only talking about the Epping Hotel at the moment. You know, there are at least 13 other hotels kind of under the same sort of threat of an injunction or closure to housing migrants. This isn't kind of one little thing that the Home Office can think has gone away. Oh, now we've sorted the kind of Epping issue. It's like, well, no, this still remains very much the sort of the start of, frankly, all of their problems. They just don't seem to have a clue.
Well, it says a lot, I think. Do you have thoughts on that, Luke?
Well, it's central to the political dilemma that the government now faces, which is they're in the worst possible situation for a government that's trying to face down an opposition from reform, because they are, as I said, you know, whatever arguments they make in court, politically, the spectacle of using human rights to effectively ignore the wishes of local people in Epping gives an absolutely huge open goal to local reform councillors and candidates there to say that human rights law is being weaponised against the people. Now, that might not be strictly legally accurate, but you're right that, you know, politicians need to appreciate how these legal cases play out in the public.
And we have a big poll today on the newspaper. Reform takes a shock 15-point lead over Labour as Farage dreams of taking power. Record lead for Farage's party, with the paper putting Reform UK on course for a huge election win, 400 seats. Polling described as catastrophic for Labour, which is struggling to deal with voters' immigration concerns. Reform more trusted to resolve the small boats issue. After the government wins its legal challenge on the Asylum Hotel. I mean, it says shock 15-point lead. Are you shocked?
No, I was literally thinking exactly that. I was just like, this isn't a shock. I'm not remotely surprised, let alone shocked by this. I mean, obviously, you know, devastating for Labour. Can't imagine too many Conservatives
17%.
Smiling into their, tea this morning. But I understand why those figures are like that. I'm not,
I mean, I was thinking recently about the kinds of laws that have made the headlines over the last 15 or 20 years. What have they been focused on? Censorship and international humanitarianism. I mean, those are the laws that really cut through. And Nigel Farage is taking a bulldoze to those laws. I mean, his proposal with regards to human rights is absolutely revolutionary. It would completely change the legal landscape, especially around issues such as immigration. I mean, if we shout back to the Rwanda plan and the decision of the Supreme Court around the Rwanda plan, that decision made reference to maybe 5 or 6 pieces of international legislation that meant that the Rwanda plan couldn't carry on. And at that time we were having the debate around why is it that a democratically elected policy like the Rwanda plan, like it or not, why is it that that plan cannot be carried forward? Well, it's because we have this maze of laws around international humanitarianism, the Refugee Convention, the European Convention on Human Rights, that effectively intervenes to prevent these democratic policies being carried out. And Nigel Farage is saying no more. He's saying, we need to get rid of all of that. Now, that's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of legislative work, but it shows real political courage and will. And I think fundamentally that's what the British people are crying out for.
Well, but a political leadership as well. Terry's been in touch from Hornchurch and says the British people should be thankful for the decision of the appeal court for yesterday's Bell Hotel appeal, because it conclusively confirms that the hard-working taxpayers of this country don't have the human rights. Only illegal immigrants and criminals have human rights. Great show, says Terry in Hornchurch. Let's just play a couple more voice notes. This one from John. He wants to comment on the poll that is out today. This is what John has to say.
Hello, Peter. Love the show. John from Watford here. I'd like to say, really, 20% of the country still think that Starmer is a good leader, and 1 in 5 people will be voting for him. I'd love to see and meet these people. Which planet do they come from? Planet Zog? Great show.
Thank you for that, John. Let's hear another one from Kelvin this time.
Morning, Peter. If Keir Starmer is letting criminals into the country, well, we know full well a lot of them are criminals, and he supports Hamas, haven't we got a right to get him out? Because that makes him a terrorist, in my view, because he's funding them, he's giving them taxpayers' money, putting them up in posh hotels, knowing full well that a lot of them will come over here and start raping our women and children. Is he, or is he not, a criminal? If so, he should be voted out. We should have a general election, get him out, and he should be arrested. Bye.
Kelvin, thanks for that. I mean, Keir Starmer isn't a criminal. He's not supporting Hamas. He's not giving them money, and that's just not true. Certainly, he wants to recognise a Palestinian state. That's something that people would say gives succour to Hamas. I certainly believe that. I think it rewards them for what they did on the 7th of October and their campaign since. But, Keir Starmer is not someone who has broken the law by saying he wants to recognise a Palestinian state. I disagree with him on that. He's not funding Hamas. Certainly, as far as I know, there haven't been Gazan refugees or asylum seekers who've come here yet. I know that there are some families who've been caught up in the humanitarian catastrophe who are going to be treated at places like Great Ormond Street Hospital. But, I just don't think there are Palestinians in those hotels. But Kelvin, listen, thanks for your message. Thanks also to Jason, who says it all comes down to fairness, plain and simple. Farage has played a blinder with his whose side are they on, and that will be played out in most interviews by Reform until the election, and Labour don't have the will to change, so they will only become more alienated from the electorate. The only shock to me about the 15-point lead is who on earth is still supporting Labour, says Jason. Well, we'll talk more about that. We'll talk about whether the Queen was a Remainer as well, and about Angela Rayner's homes. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Talk.
who effectively told us they are scared for their children's safety in the area, and they are worried about what the next steps are and what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't quite know the ramifications of today's hearing yet. We get to see how it progresses and what that appeal might mean for the future. But I mean, the fact the government is allowed to appeal, that could have, if that wasn't the case, then it would effectively tear apart the whole hotel system and leave the whole asylum hotel system in tatters.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Leslie's been in touch and says, "Hi Peter, why is Germany allowed to deport migrants to Ghana, Nigeria, Iraq, etc.? We have to supply migrants with hotels and all other freebies. Afghanistan as well. People keep saying, oh, Nigel Farage can't possibly do a deal with the Taliban. I mean, whether we should send people back to Afghanistan or not is something I'm very happy to debate. And do give me a shout on 0344 499 1000 if you want to. But the fact that people say it can't be done, it has been done. It's been done by Germany. I just want to play a couple more voice notes. One is from Steve.
Hi, Cardi P. Steve from Manchester. Great show. Labour, all I can say is I don't believe a single word that comes out of any of their mouths. They just lie and lie and lie constantly. And that Angela Eagle saying that she wants to close the Bell Hotel. Yeah, probably in about 50 years when we've got 1 million migrants or something like that. Okay, mate, keep up the good work. See you soon.
Steve, thanks very much. Let's hear one more from Jenny.
Hi, Peter. I'm just wondering if you could ask what the human rights are of the serving Royal Navy sailors that are being housed on a barge in Scotland, and they're because they're up there with the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier that's gone into dry dock for refurb, when the barge wasn't good enough for asylum seekers, but our sailors are being housed on it. I'd be interested to know thoughts on that. And just to add to this voice note that I know that because my son's one of them.
Well, listen, thank you very much for that, and well done for your son for serving this country. Really appreciate that, Jenny. Let's get a view from Luke on that.
Well, it's easy to talk about the different human rights of different people in different places. The way the law is supposed to work is that everyone has human rights, and the Human Rights Act is an attempt to embody certain things that are equal to everyone. So everyone has the right to freedom of expression, the right to family life, the right to freedom from torture, etc. But I also understand how human rights have now become this talking point whenever something politically awkward like this comes up. The real political question at the heart of this is about priorities, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's about saying, why is it that you have people serving in the Royal Navy living in less salubrious surroundings than people who have come into the country illegally? And that's the fundamental political question. And it's easy to see how human rights as an idea gets tied up with this, because it feels unjust. It feels as though someone is being treated more.
Well, I'm sure Jenny feels that her son is really has got a raw deal here, especially when he's serving his country.
Well, exactly, and I think that's the fundamental political question that the main parties have to deal with.
Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, 3 homes. It's all a bit complicated in regard to where she's registered, where she's paying tax. Has she avoided stamp duty, and actually is that just what happens when you own 3 homes? I wouldn't know. Amy Fisher's been looking at this for us. Amy, what do you think?
Sure. I mean, look, the complications are, as you say, she has bought this second home, a flat in Hove, that was £800,000. She should have paid probably about £70,000 worth of stamp duty on it. She didn't. She only kind of paid 30. She was able to do that and thus kind of, some people are saying, avoid paying £40,000 of stamp duty on her second home, is because she designated it as her primary primary residence, right? It's not a second home down by the seaside, not kind of holiday place, but her primary residence. Now, the complication comes and where, you know, the waters start to get a little bit muddy, as in her first home, if you like, in Ashton-upon-Lyme, that was her...
That's in her constituency.
It's in her constituency. Yeah. That was her primary residence. She then says, oh no, but when I got divorced, I gave up any stake in that, you know, the first property in Ashton, if you like. OK, we can follow this so far. The complicating bit comes that for council tax purposes, the place in Ashton-upon-Lyme is still her primary residence, i.e. where she pays the council tax, although she says she doesn't have a stake in it anymore, and now this second flat in Hove is her primary one. And the council tax point is that she's claiming that Ashton-in-Lyme, her first home, if you like, for council tax purposes, is so that she doesn't have to pay it on her third home. Which is the Grace and Favour flat in London that she gets. So that's the one she doesn't own. Yeah. It's the Grace and Favour she gets.
She gets that as Deputy Prime Minister. I think quite a few people would like to have this form of dilemma. This is a dilemma,
exactly. So she's now £3 Rayner. £3 Rayner. And kind of all of this, if you break it down in those steps, kind of it is very complicated, and exactly what's being claimed where and where's primary, and you know, has there been some kind of avoidance, either inadvertent
or deliberate? Does it pass the smell test?
No, this is exactly what it sort of doesn't matter.
You're a former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party.
There are too many questions about it.
Kevin Hollingrick has written to the Independent Advisor on Ministerial Standards. Does this pass the smell test? Because people will look at this.
It absolutely doesn't. And once you get past, you know, kind of first odd question as to stamp duty, second odd question, okay, well, which one is the primary resident, and then the third question being all about this council. As soon as you're like 3 questions in, you're sort of, I'm not quite following all of it. You're done. You know, absolutely whether she's kind of misstepped, either deliberately or not, has sort of become moot at this point, because everybody, or the vast majority of people, are looking at this story and just thinking, this stinks a bit. This stinks.
Well, look, there's no allegations of any illegality, but what is absolutely clear is that this is political incompetence, especially when she's facing off a reform insurgency in her own constituency of Ashton-under-Lyne. The idea that you would want to be known as someone who manipulates the rules in order to save some money, I think, is a terrible...
you.
Yeah,
so work the rules that you get the sort of benefit out of
Exactly.
I didn't mean to suggest you've done anything illegal. I'm not saying that, but certainly maybe not quite within the spirit and the principles in which we would expect somebody senior in the government to...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that echoes what some people have been saying, which is, you know, I heard some commentators this morning saying, oh, anyone would do this. If they could save 40 grand on their stamp duty, then anyone would sort of take a luxurious view of the rules and not play within the spirit. Well, most people don't have the option.
Well, exactly. Yes.
And most people... And actually, if you were housing minister, I don't think you would. I mean, I think
it's a very good point. Luke and Amy, thank you very much indeed. That's Luke Gittos and Amy Fisher. Thanks to them for their comments. Let's get yours on in the next hour. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another 2 grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their their boots. Now Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Really appreciate it this morning. Here right through until 12:30 and tomorrow between 10 and 1. Loads to talk about, including the Bell Hotel decision. We're going to talk to King's Counsel in a second, a criminal barrister who'll take us the whole way through it. Also, Sarah White is going to be with us, an Epping Forest resident, mum and campaigner, about what she thinks. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about a council offering support to staff unsettled by St George's flags. Yes, really. And JD Vance saying push back against the crazies offended by the flag. And Angela Rayner's homes are upsetting you. She has 3 of them. She's said anyway that she's attempting, there's an inquiry into the independent advisor on ministerial standards about whether she did the right thing with all of that. We'll make sure you get your say on everything today. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, or send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss here on Talk. Stay with us. Hev in Kent has been in touch with something that has amused me greatly. Morning, Peter. I'm beginning to think Angela Rayner, or Angela, should be Chancellor of the Exchequer. She actually seems to know how to save money, says Hev in Kent. Dan, also in Kent, says, is Angela Rayner a hypocrite or a secret Thatcherite capitalist? I think it's pretty secret if she is. Anyway, another person, well, we've got a few questions about judges as well. We'll get into that perhaps in a second with Simon Spence. Trevor says, hi Cardi P, really enjoying the show as we drive down for the Watford versus Southampton game today. Not sure if Ryan is your producer today, but he'll be missing a good game, says Trevor in Harrow. Ryan's not on the desk today, it's Cal today, but Trevor, thank you for that. And Michelle says, Amy Fisher is wrong. I personally do not care where the migrants sleep. In a tent would suffice. They are not good people coming here and our cultures do not align. There's something fishy going on in this government. It treats them like royalty. We are all angry, scared and to boiling point, says Michelle. Well, the government has responded to this. Angela Eagle, Dame Angela Eagle, is the Immigration Minister. She's been talking about that decision at the Court of Appeal yesterday. This is what she had to say.
Well, nobody wants to close the Bell Hotel and all other asylum hotels more than me, and we have pledged that we are going to do that by the end of the Parliament. Today's judgment allows us to do it in a planned and managed way so that we can get the system running and make sure that we can exit hotels for once and for all.
Dame Angela Eagle there, the Immigration Minister. Chris Philp is the Shadow Home Secretary. He's been out and about. He posted this on his social media yesterday.
So the Epping hotel judgment has just come in and it shows the government, the Labour government, using the courts against the British people. They even brazenly said in court that the rights of the illegal immigrants in that hotel were more important than the rights of local people in Epping. That is an absolutely disgraceful thing for the government to say, and shows whose side they are on. Let's not forget these hotels were being closed down in the 9 months before the last election. If that had continued, there wouldn't even be any hotels open right now. But the reason these hotels are still being used is because the government cancelled the Rwanda deterrent just days before it was due to start, and as a result, the numbers illegally crossing the Channel this year have been the worst ever. This weak Labour government is unwilling to take the steps needed to get our borders under control, and cases like today's judgment and the hotel in Epping are the results of this Labour government's failures.
We'll talk in a second to an Epping resident, Sarah White. She's a mum and a campaigner. We'll talk to her, but just now we're going to speak to Simon Spence Casey. He's a criminal barrister at Red Lion Chambers. Simon, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
I'm not sure Chris Philp is actually completely correct in terms of what he said there in regard to the human rights grounds. It was part of the legal argument, the written legal argument, I understand. Quite a number of people contacting us today are saying, why has this happened? Is the government on our side? And there are questions that some of the newspapers are raising as well about the judges. Maybe we'll get into that in just a second. But what is your impression of this case? Was it ever winnable? Because many lawyers I've spoken to said that the government was never going to win this case, and the council putting it forward were just that they're just not surprised that the Court of Appeal has overturned this. What's your impression in your expert opinion, Simon?
I think it's important to look at the context of what this case was about. It's not a final decision. The final hearing in relation to the council's application is listed for October. And what the judge at first instance, Mr. Justice Ed, was grant a temporary injunction pending the hearing of that full appeal. That is actually legally quite an unusual step, because the general approach is that you leave the status quo until the hearing and a final decision is made. The appeal by the Somani Hotels and the Home Secretary was based on two grounds. Firstly, that the judge got the law wrong, and secondly, he refused to allow the Home Secretary to be a party in the hearing for the original application for a temporary injunction. And they were the two issues that the Court of Appeal were looking at. And all the Court of Appeal have done, in fact, is say that the current position should remain in place until the final hearing in October. And that, in fact, legally is not an unusual position. They're not making a final decision about whether the hotel should be shut or not. They were simply looking at the current position and deciding whether it was legally proper for the injunction to be put in place before the final hearing.
Many people saying that the final hearing, it is unlikely that this hotel will be closed as a result. What is your estimation of how things now stand, Simon?
It's very difficult to predict. One of the unusual features of this case is that the Bell Hotel has been used for housing asylum seekers on 3 separate occasions in the past. And on each occasion, the council didn't raise an objection to it at all. And as I read the press summary of the current case, they were aware in March of 2025 that this was what was going to happen. And they had agreed to a limit of 138 people being housed in the hotel, in which case there appears to have been a complete U-turn by the council. And as I read in the press summary, that's Council SEL rather than Council CIL, Council for the Council, said that the change of position was as a result of the protests. And the Court of Appeal took the view that in a planning application, and what we have to bear in mind is this is about a change of use under the Town and Country Planning Act, whether there are protests or not isn't a relevant consideration for an application for change of use. And that all sounds a bit dry and legalistic, but that is essentially what the Court of Appeal was saying.
There are many who feel betrayed by this judgment, Simon. There are those as well, including the Daily Telegraph. I'm looking at a report here that has, I'm not saying for a second that Lord Justice Bean didn't consider the law properly. I'm not saying he didn't do his job, but factually, He was chairman of the Fabian Society for a year. He has been a member of the Labour Party for 28 years. He was a treasurer of the Society of Labour Lawyers. In terms of the perception of the judiciary, surely the judiciary should be not just impartial, but seen to be impartial.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. Of course, a number of barristers are also politically active. And if they then go on to become judges because they're considered to be of a sufficient quality, it would be wrong to hold their political activism beforehand against them. I don't know how this case was allocated to the 3 particular judges who heard it. I'm bound to say if there had been any suggestion of a conflict of interest, either a different judge should have been allocated to preside over the hearing, or Lord Justice Bean himself should have recused himself. I don't know if he's still an active member of the Labour Party.
I don't think he is any longer.
No, and as I say, I don't know how this case was allocated to these 3 particular judges. Of course, the High Court generally isn't sitting at the moment. It's in recess, a bit like Parliament is. And so there'd have been a limited number of judges available to hear this case at short notice. So I personally, I think any High Court judge, and particularly Court of Appeal judge, is able to look objectively at the decision, whatever their own political views. And they say, right at the start of their judgment, we should say that what this appeal is not about, it is not concerned with the merits of government policy in relation to the provision of accommodation for asylum seekers in hotels or otherwise. And if we take that at face value, as I think we must, that is a clear indication that they're not involved in the politics of it. They're just looking at the law and the procedural irregularities as they found them.
But it absolutely, the result of their decision absolutely has political implications, does it not?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
And sometimes the law and politics clash head on. That's simply a fact of life.
And that's sometimes just how these things happen. Simon, listen, thank you for your analysis. I really appreciate it. That's Simon Spence, KC, who's a criminal barrister at Red Lion Chambers. Thanks also to Alistair from York. He says, why isn't the Home Office using planning laws of change of use of hotels to detention centres, detain the illegal migrants in said hotel detention centre via security fencing and a prison guard type security presence, remove all luxuries and allowances and start the asylum application and deportation process? Surely that would be a quick way of showing the public that this issue is being tackled, and local residents will feel a little safer knowing that these predominantly young men are not roaming the streets causing a nuisance. Great show, keep up the good work, says Alistair, who appoints the appeal judges. The judges, above all, should be totally impartial. Their names and affiliations were released prior to the judgment, and conflict of interest, if even implied, was an issue, then other judges should have been appointed. Neil in Surrey says, I've listened to all your guests' comments and opinions so far, and I've not heard anyone say Angela Rayner has broken any law. She hasn't broken any law. Tax avoidance is not illegal. Tax evasion is. This is a loophole that she has exploited, as any smart accountant would do for anybody in the same circumstances, says Neil in Surrey. No, there's no suggestion whatsoever that Angela Rayner has broken the law. The point is, what does it look okay? Is it reasonable? Do the public think it's reasonable from an electoral political point of view? That's the question we're asking. We're not saying she's a criminal. The Conservative chairman, Kevin Hollingreg, has written to the independent advisor in Ministerial Standards, Sir Laurie Magnus, requesting he investigate whether Ms Rayner broke ministerial rules. Back to the Bell Hotel, I want to talk to Sarah White, who's an Epping Forest resident. She's a mum and a campaigner. Sarah, thanks for joining me on the programme today. What are your thoughts about the Bell Hotel and the decision of the Court of Appeal?
I think it's outrageous, to be honest with you, but I think fundamentally we need to look at the councillors of Epping and how they let the people of Epping down. They failed to submit the paperwork. This could have been prevented a long time ago. And, you know, I would just be concerned at their decisions and are they actually capable of doing their job?
Well, a lot of people are asking that question, and actually the judge heavily criticised the council there as well. There were protests last night. We know there were 3 arrests there, but largely peaceful. Were you there last night? What was the kind of atmosphere around the Bell Hotel?
Yes, I was there last night, and being one of the I'm heavily involved in organising the protests. And, you know, we did say to people, don't feel like you need to come tonight. Some people was worried that it might become agitated. we had already committed to go in supporting the members of Cheshunt with their protests, because we do that on a Friday evening. Myself and a few of the others did turn up, and it actually was quite civilised. It was only then later on, when usually our protests are finished, that there was 3 arrests. One of them, however, was a drink driver. So it wasn't, that wasn't part
that's
of...
not, that's, but on the face of it anyway, not specifically linked to your, it just happened to be in that area at that time. But nonetheless, there'll be concerns that there were any arrests there, because obviously the majority, for you as a peaceful protester who wants to make your point peacefully, it must be very annoying when that happens, actually.
It's very annoying, and you know, I just left moments before one of the arrests took place, and I will say I was watching a live feed of what was going on, and unfortunately, you've also got the police are getting very agitated now, because they're out week in, week out with this, and I did see it was a little bit of excessive force, to be honest, and I think tensions are high on both sides. And, you know, I think what the government need to take into account is being told that our human rights don't matter and the rights of people that have broken into this country illegally tip ours. That's not just the people of Epping, that's the whole country. So
how does that feel as a resident of Epping when you're protesting about this and you see the legal argument that Home Office lawyers paid for by our taxes make, that your human rights as a resident of Epping are not as important as asylum seekers? Now, the judge didn't have any truck with that. The Court of Appeal said that wasn't something that was, as they put it, attractive. But nonetheless, Home Office lawyers put that argument forward in written submissions. How does that make you feel?
Well, it just makes me feel disgusted to actually be part of, I'm supposed to be part of Great Britain and supposed to be part of something that's valued, and I'm an upstanding member of the community. And then myself, my children, and everybody in all of the communities up and down the country come down so low down the pecking order to illegal migrants that are undocumented men. They've come here illegally. What does that tell me? Can I now go and commit crimes and it will be okay for me to commit a crime? No, it wouldn't. I would be sentenced, I would be put in prison.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for your thoughts, Sarah. Appreciate you joining me this morning. That's Sarah White there. She's an Epping Forest resident, a mother and a campaigner. Thank you very much for your thoughts on that. What are your thoughts on what Sarah is saying and what everybody's saying this morning? 0344 499 1000. You can send in your voice note, less than a minute please, or you can give me a ring on that number. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell, and there are loads of ways to get in touch. I want to hear from you this morning right through till 12:30. We'll talk as well about the council offering, council in Essex offering staff support because they might be unsettled by St George's flags. JD Vance as well, who says that he wants to push back against the crazies offended by the English flag. We'll talk about the royals as well. This is the allegation in the Times newspaper that the Queen was a Remainer. This is a new book called Power and the Palace, and we'll also talk about Angela Rayner and what she's going on. Two Angelas this morning, Angela Levin, the royal biographer and commentator, and Angela Rayner. Your calls, texts and tweets as well, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
extremely let down. Feel let down every angle we turn. You know, obviously let down by the government. They're not listening to the British people. We feel very much second-class citizens in our own country. Let down locally by the Conservative-led Epping Forest District Council. You know, actually, it's their inaction and their many errors that has allowed this not to happen. Why? I said before on one of your shows, why has it taken them till August?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Jason in the Lake District, who says, let me just find this, the judge story in the Rayner house scenario don't pass the sniff test with the public, says Jason. It doesn't matter if it's innocent or guilty, it simply smells of wrongdoing. And Lenny in Ashford says, I believe people who are intimidated by our country's flags, this shows the danger and disruption of diversity, in Lenny's opinion. And Sebastian says, I don't get the issues mentioned in the High Court ruling. This is about planning. Is the hotel use in breach of planning or not? That should be the only consideration. Great show as ever, says Sebastian. Well, thank you for that. I want to take a call now, and if you want to get your call in, the number, as you know, is 0344 499 1000. Meenakshi is in Ilford in Essex. Meenakshi, you're very welcome to the programme. I think we disagree on something. Tell me why you think I'm wrong.
No, I was challenging. Hi, by the way.
Hi there. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, I was challenging your statement as fact that everybody in there, they're not asylum seekers, they're economic migrants.
I think there's some who will be genuine asylum seekers, but there are an awful lot of people who are economic migrants, and I think we've got to be realistic about that. What's your perspective on that, Meenakshi?
Well, the thing is, I'm sure you would say, right, if we look at Afghanistan, for instance, I'm sure even you would say that the Taliban are amongst the worst oppressive rulers on the earth.
100%.
Right. So millions of the Afghanis don't want to live under that regime, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them, many, most went to Pakistan.
Yep.
And Pakistan's bearing most of the burden of it. In fact, now they are sending, unfortunately, them back to Afghanistan, which is, for those people, it's not a good thing.
Well, and certainly the Taliban may well take retribution against people who've tried to escape from them as well. So no, I've no issue with people from Afghanistan seeking asylum. The question, I suppose, should be, should they do it in this country?
Yeah, the thing is, if you think about the history of Afghanistan, I don't know how many people that are outside the pub really, just talking about Afghanistan, each country has its own history.
Yep.
If you look at Afghanistan, the Russians were there, for many years.
Yeah.
USA went in there. In fact, Trump did a deal with the Taliban so that they could just move in and take over. So you've got a lot of external factors that are impinging on a country. It's not just their, just a basket case.
Can I ask you, Meenakshi, do you think...
But would you agree with that? Would you agree that there are lots of external
Absolutely. I don't disagree with anything you've said. What I want to ask you now, as a follow-up to that, is do you believe, because what we did in Afghanistan, we went to war there, obviously, do you think we should take asylum seekers as a result of that?
Well, what I think is that it's the whole world, right? It's not just Afghanistan. There's many places.
Sure, but you've given a very good example.
You and I, if we were there, we'd do anything to get out of there. And those people outside the Belfast, they'd do anything. If you were if this, God forbid, something awful happened here, and you would do it. That's human survival.
So I agree with everything you've said, Meenakshi. I suppose the follow-up question, again, I would have another question, is if you're going to get asylum, is it in Pakistan? Is it in France, for example? And the problem is that when people say they're seeking asylum or they're economic migrants or whatever, and I think some people are economic migrants. The question is, if France is a safe country, why come here? There are people who say, well, they've got family links and things like that. I understand that, but just because you want to come somewhere doesn't mean that you should have the right to do so.
No, I agree. The thing is, as I said, there's millions that go to the neighbouring countries, right? So the neighbouring countries bear the burden. So people need to understand that. But there does need to be like a worldwide coordination so we can all share the burden, because we'd want that. If we were in that situation, we'd want people to be thinking about us.
And the thing is, Meenakshi, I agree with that as well. And I agree, and I think, Meenakshi, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we've got to share the burden somehow, whether supporting people there.
But we often do take our fair share. For example, with Ukrainian migrants, or people who brought them into their homes, and I don't think it's about, for some people don't want any asylum seekers whatsoever. I totally get that, man. Actually, that's a valid opinion. I don't think it's quite my opinion, but there are many people who say absolutely no asylum seekers whatsoever. My point is that if people are fleeing, or genuinely fleeing war and persecution, Ukraine is a really good example, Afghanistan another example, well, those people may well feel they're refugees, may well want to be somewhere else. You've put out your case very, very strongly, but there's got to be a better system, and what I think we agree on is the fact that the system isn't working at the moment.
The thing is, there's so much disinformation. Like, even with Eritrea, we don't hear about what's happening there. With the Rohingyas in Burma, there's not that many here. But we don't hear about what is going on there. Anyway, but your point about the economic migrants, honestly, the only way is to change the economy of the world. Because you know what? When in this country, when you had industries like the mining industries or whatever, when they declined, right?
Yeah.
You're told to get on your bike.
Yeah.
Don't moan about it. Find work somewhere else. A lot of people have to move south, have to go. People from here move to other countries to better their lives. So, unfortunately, when you've got such an unequal world, you're never going to stop this.
And I don't criticise anybody for being an economic migrant. I moved to London because there were job opportunities there that weren't in my village in Northern Ireland. I'm not saying I'm an economic migrant, but I'm just saying I moved to the capital city of my country. And I totally get when people are economic migrants and want to be economic migrants. The question is, should they be allowed to come in illegally on boats in order to do so, when actually there are other ways they can survive and thrive in France or in other countries, or even in neighbouring countries to their own? And if they're posing as asylum seekers, well, that's not fair either.
No, but we don't know. But that whole factor, we've all got to share the burden. It's like, we're not all... The time has gone when each little country can think about it. It's a world system. Okay. Everything's operating on a world system. And unless we all understand that and, get to grips with, this ain't going to stop. Okay. Because that's the nature of human beings. And, and what I do object to is people outside the pub protesting, and I'll tell you why. Because when the MPs had people outside their houses, and there was a big uproar that this is where they're living. Don't protest it. Why don't they go and protest outside the council or the government?
But this is where it's happening, Meenakshi. This is where these people are being housed, and a lot of people. Hold on, I'll bring you in again in a second, Meenakshi. But just a final point from me. This is a focal point. It's near a school. It's where this is happening in people's community, and they feel their community has been taken away from them.
Yeah, but say there's even one person in there that has been through trauma, has seen their family, terrible things. Because that's why you seek asylum. Even if there's one person in there, how do you think they're getting re-traumatized by another whole load of people hating them and wanting to, get rid of them? That's not the way to do it. You've got to do it. The people that put them in that hotel, go and protest there.
Okay.
that is legitimate.
Okay, Meenakshi, thanks for your view. Really appreciate it. Let's hear from Lottie in Lancashire. Lottie's on the line. Lottie, what would you like to say?
Morning.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Burden. The last caller said we need to take more burden. In this country now, we feel like beasts of burden.
I think we've taken our fair share, and then some, actually.
Oh, my word. Right, what I want to speak about is the HMOs.
Houses of multiple, or homes of multiple occupancy. Yeah. So what's your view, Lottie?
So what happens is you put all these people into different areas, and then the housing prices go down. And then the landlords buy up more houses and they put more migrants in, and then more people move out. I saw this in the 70s, all the way up to now in Bolton. I used to work in Bolton, and I used to go to this old couple's house. This was in the 90s, for work, and they were the only white old couple left in that particular street. Streets, like the whole of the hundreds and hundreds of streets, and they were determined to stay till they died because they weren't being pushed out. And this is exactly what is going to happen now. And then those areas turn into no-go zones, and then they turn into slums, and then and it's just perpetuated time and time and time again, and we're not going to learn anything. Really, are we not? Because I live in a very, very nice estate, and I'm frightened to death that this is going to happen to this estate, because English people will just move out. They'll leave. But at the end of the day, this is our country. Where are we going to go when it all goes wrong? If it all goes wrong, all these migrants, they can bugger off back to their countries. Where are we going to go when it all goes wrong?
Lottie, thanks for your thoughts. I think a lot of people feel the same way, and a lot of people will share those concerns. I appreciate that. Let's hear a couple more voice notes. Sharon has been in touch.
Hi Peter, Sharon from Yorkshire. Just getting ready to go to our peaceful protest in Wakefield. But we can guarantee, as I said last week when we were there, that they did bus in antis to protest against us. But they're just showing the colours now, so that it's not deterring us from going and doing a peaceful protest. But I'm guessing that this week as well there'll be a lot more people coming, because they're noticing that they can stand up in a crowd, and I think that's what we do as British. We stand together. Have a good day, Peter.
Sharon, thanks. Appreciate that, and hope that all goes well for you. And as Sharon says, that will stay totally peaceful. People standing up for their rights, and well for them to do so. That is a democracy. That's what we do. John has been in touch as well with a voice note.
Good morning. It's John from the East Midlands. Part of the judgment seemed to infer that the moving of 138 people by the 12th of September was an enormous task and difficult to do. I cannot understand how anyone can think that when a lot more than 130 people will arrive this weekend and will be accommodated in a 4-star hotel without any problem whatsoever.
John, that's a really, really good point. And the point is as well with the Bell Hotel, that we're in a situation where those people could have been moved. And in fact, there was a plan, there was a contingency plan if the ruling had gone against the council to move them to another hotel. So it absolutely can be done. It could have been done by the 12th of September. We'll see what happens in the middle of October now. One person has been in touch on text saying, I'm having an extension to my house. I'm waiting to hear from the Home Office to put their barristers on the case. Listen, thanks for all your messages. Keep your calls, text, tweets and voice notes of less than a minute coming in. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Please don't send in voice notes of 2 minutes 15 seconds. Less than a minute, please. If they're 2 minutes and 15 seconds, we're just not going to play them, I'm afraid, and Tech Up Dave becomes Tetchy Up Dave, and we don't like that. However, we will play a voice note from Rob, who has sent this one in.
Good morning, Peter. It's Rob here, mate, from Starbridge, just south of racist Birmingham City Council. Peter, that decision yesterday by the judges, it just goes against everything that's decent and fair in this country. And now I'm worried that when it comes to the grooming rape gangs inquiry, yeah, we're just going to see the same thing. Lefty judges pushing back and saying, oh, well, you know, the illegal immigrants, oh, it's all right. They're all right to rape the little girls because we care more about the bloody immigrants than we do, you know, the young women, girls in this country. So yeah, just another day in two-tier Britain, Pete. What a great time to be alive, eh? Cheers, mate. Off to bake a two-tier cake. See ya.
Rob, enjoy your baking, and thanks for your opinion. I think an awful lot of people will agree with you in regard to the two-tier nature of so many aspects of this. Tad may well be one of them. He says, morning, Peter. I think by not doing everything humanly possible to stop immigration, it clearly demonstrates the three main Westminster parties actually want it to happen. They might suggest otherwise, but it isn't evidenced by their actions. We've already witnessed a dilution of our values, and we are fast approaching the tipping point where we might never get them back. Well, Nigel Farage says the same thing. Let's talk about a couple of different stories about a council offering support to staff unsettled by St George's flags. This is an issue in Essex, but it's also an issue in Portsmouth, and George Madgwick is a Reform councillor there and joins us now. George, just talk us through what is happening there, because there were some people who wanted there to be England sort of curbstones and approaches to Mini Roundabout, for example. They put red crosses. That seems to be something that's happening in many parts of the country, but the council there wants to remove those. The Liberal Democrats want to remove those, but are very happy to put a Pride Pelican crossing across the road. Just tell us what's been happening there.
Yeah, good morning, Peter. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That is exactly what's happening. So obviously people last week put red paint onto different crossings, etc. Now, obviously I don't condone vandalism of any description, but it's happened, it's there, it exists. And what is also important to note in this story is that Portsmouth gave itself permission, I think this is the key point here, gave itself permission without any consultation just 5 years ago to put a rainbow crossing or flag across one of the streets in Portsmouth without, as I say, without any consultation whatsoever. But yet they've taken a proactive approach now just a couple of days ago to start removing the red markings, the St George Cross markings from the road, but still obviously keeping the rainbow one. And it's double standards. I've said a very good point, which I believe in, is that I think that the red paint should be left there. It's already there. You know, I say I don't condone vandalism, but it's there, it exists. And you should let weather take its course. Natural rain and wind over the next few months will take that away. But yet they're spending taxpayers' money removing this. And they've got absolute hypocrisy and double standards because they will not put a St George's flag down anywhere on one of the roads, but yet they will give themselves permission to put a rainbow flag down, and it just seems like hypocrisy.
And it's not just in small boats, it's not just in that area, it's not just the small boats controversy and the, I know the Asylum hotel controversy that we've talked about before on this programme, George. It's also the fact that there are many councils right across the country that are leaving, for example, Palestinian flags up, leaving as decided by itself, as you say, without consultation, to essentially recreate a pride flag across a pedestrian crossing. Yet when this has happened and their council's taking down the flag of this country, they're getting rid of that. Now, as like you, I don't condone vandalism either. I come from a part of the world where many people paint flagstones, put up flags and all the rest, when I have a sort of probably slightly more complicated relationship than some people with that. But the fact is, St George's flag is the flag of this country. The pride flag is not the flag of this country, yet it appears to be given priority by many councils, including in Portsmouth.
Absolutely, and you're completely correct. We have multiple flag raising ceremonies in this city, which is absolutely fine. You know, in the last couple of months, we've had a Pakistan flag raising ceremony, an India flag raising ceremony, a Maltese flag raising ceremony, and that's absolutely fine. I don't think anybody on the, say, the right of politics down in Portsmouth has any issue with that. What we have an issue with down here is the double standards. The fact that there is so much shame put on displaying a St George's cross flag or a British flag, but not the same shame when supporting another country's flag. I mean, our own chamber, our own council chamber has the Ukraine flag standing right behind it. So we do display a lot of flags in this city. We always have done. During the Gay Pride month, and Portsmouth was a home of Gay Pride this year, we had Gay Pride flags up, we had transgender flags up, we had all sorts of different flags up. But there just seems to be in Portsmouth, amongst the I guess the leadership of the establishment, this real shame of the British flag going up, and people make excuses that they're saying that it's being used to agitate people, it's being used as the wrong reasons. It's not. It's being used as a display of our patriotism and our pride in our country. That's all this is. I've not heard anybody speak about race when they're raising the flag. They're doing it to send a clear message that we're a patriotic nation and we want to be treated the same as everybody else.
And Essex County Council, not a million miles from Portsmouth, says has offered support to staff who feel unsettled by St George's flags that will be put up across the country. In an email, Essex County Council bosses told workers that flags evoke feelings of discomfort and be associated with immigrant anti-rhetoric, particularly for colleagues of colour. An online campaign called Operation Raise the Colours has prompted hundreds of flags to be raised across England in the past few weeks, and people saying that the flags may hold different meanings for different people. The email encouraged staff who are unsettled or affected by what you're seeing to reach out to their managers. Are they members of the Four Tops? That's my question. Adding, we stand firmly against all forms of racism and discrimination, and we're committed to fostering a safe, inclusive and respectful environment for everyone. They're not apparently committed to fostering an inclusive environment for people who want to raise the English flag, which might be, I don't know, English people.
You're right, Peter, and I think, to be honest with you, if there's people on that council that do have a problem with the English flag that much that is affecting them, they probably do need help, because if you're in an English city or an English town in an English country displaying an English flag and for some reason that offends you, the flag isn't the problem, you are. You know, and I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that anybody would see that flag in this country while living here and feel agitated or feel hurt or distressed or upset. It's truly shameful. The flag for many is something of pride, and so it should be, you know, and I think that councils doing anything to suggest that the flag is used as a negative rather than a positive is shameful. It shouldn't be done. The flag is a prideful state of our nation. It needs to be raised, and this is what I said going back to the zebra crossing. This is what I said to our council, that if you want to make people happy, if you want to resolve this problem, there's an easy resolution. You could publish a document saying, we take note, we've listened to your opinions, and we think that we should put a St George's flag on the road. Let's do a consultation, let's do a proper one, you know, not vandalism, let's do a proper one that's authorised by the council, and we'll do that and celebrate it. But of course, they won't do that, will they?
George, it's really interesting. J.D. Vance, who is the Vice President of the United States, has actually weighed in on this. Let's hear what he has been saying.
It's okay to be proud of your country. It's in fact a good thing to be proud of your country, and we should push back against the crazies who say we should be so ashamed of our culture and of our heritage that we shouldn't be willing to fly a flag. It's craziness. We got to call that craziness out. I'd encourage our European friends to follow suit.
So a nod there to our European friends. I'm sure he means us here in the UK as well. He was speaking to Fox News there. That was J.D. Vance. What do you make of his comments, George?
I agree entirely. And he's made some really good points. They were having a real big problem with this back in the Black Lives Matter and Biden era, where people were literally terrified to put their own nation's flag up. So we know that this was happening in America. We know that America got hold of this and resolved this problem. And this is something that's happening here too. We're seeing dramatic amounts of intimidation for raising a flag. Just in our area alone, we had somebody, some old person that decided to knit and yarn a display to go on top of a post box. That was vandalised and removed. We've had people that have had graffiti saying the word Nazi and racist on their garage door because they've raised a flag in their house. So we are getting this type of thing already locally, where people are becoming concerned to raise the flag. And they're right, these people are crazy. I think JD Vance is absolutely right, they're crazy. And what they're trying to do is put pressure on people like me, me and you and others that are prideful in the flag. I've had so much abuse in the last week on social media from the left. And when I say so much abuse, I've never experienced this level of abuse. I've been told to die. I've been told I'm a Nazi. I've been told I should choke to death. I've been told so many different things in the last couple of days, purely because I've been putting statuses up about our flags. Not about migrants, about our flags. And I've had more hate in the last 48 hours since I've been posting about flags than in the last 4 or 5 months where I've been speaking about migrants. There's a real issue here.
Listen, I'm really sorry to hear that that has happened. We've got a voice note from Jacob who has sent this in. I think he's got a question for you, George. Let's hear what Jacob has to say.
Hi, I'm Jacob from Portsmouth. We really support the work that George is doing here in the city. I'd love to know his opinion, whether he thinks it's acceptable for the leader of the council to stand on the steps of the civic offices chanting that he wants more migrants in the city.
Has that happened, George?
Unfortunately, Peter, and I'll take a large sigh before I answer, yes, it has. The leader of the council, and I know he's not here to answer, so we've got to be a little bit careful what we say, but I can tell you what's true and what's available on social media, and that is that, yes, he did. He has stood on the steps of the Guildhall civic offices multiple times, and sometimes alongside these Antifa masked-up men and alongside Stand Up to Racism, and chanted that he wants more refugees or more migrants in this city. Yes, he has done that.
Okay.
I've called him out on that publicly. He doesn't see that that's a problem. So yes, so the caller there is correct. That has happened. And I think, Peter, take away that councillor's personal views. And remember, he is the leader of the council, but he's also a person. And I think if he stood on the steps as a person and held those opinions, then look, everyone's entitled to free speech, everyone's entitled to opinion, that's fine. But when he stood on the steps as the leader of the council, he's representing the council and all the residents as one. And that's where I find it unacceptable, because he is answerable to the entire population of the city and all differing views. And obviously he's taken a real strong stance that he welcomes more refugees in the city. And as you remember, Peter, the stats come out last week from the Home Office that shows that Portsmouth currently have more migrants in our city that come across via illegal methods than all other Hampshire councils combined.
George, thank you for that. As George correctly says, Councillor Steve Pitt is not here to defend himself, but we know that factually that happened, and George was responding to that. So thank you to Councillor George Madrick there, who is Councillor in Portsmouth. Appreciate his contribution today. We're going to talk about the Queen in a minute, the old Queen, the Queen Elizabeth II, and whether she was a Remainer. That is the astonishing claim in a new book. Angela Levin, the royal biographer, will take us through that story in just a minute. Stay with us here on Talk.
who effectively told us they are scared for their children's safety in the area, and they are worried about what the next steps are and what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't quite know the ramifications of today's hearing yet. We get to see how it progresses and what that appeal might mean for the future. But I mean, the fact the government is allowed to appeal, that could have, if that wasn't the case, then it would effectively tear apart the whole hotel system and leave the whole asylum hotel system in tatters.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for all your comments. Keep them coming in, 0344 499 1000. We'll get as many people, as many views on the air between now and 12:30. I want to talk now about a story which is on the front page of the Times. The Queen was a Remainer. This is an exclusive extract in the paper from Power on the Palace, a new book. This is Queen Elizabeth II was a Remainer, opposed to Britain's decision to leave the European Union. A new book has sensationally claimed. It's alleged the Queen told a senior minister 3 months before the 2016 Brexit referendum, we shouldn't leave the EU. It's better to stick with the devil you know. Let's speak to Angela Levin, who is a royal biographer and commentator. Angela, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of this?
Well, it's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? I mean, one thing is that, you know, anybody who's royal must be politically neutral. So you have to sort of deal with that one straight away. You can't imagine that the Queen would actually say that in front of anyone, because she was so followed everything to the figure, and I think that that's strange. But it's an extraordinary thing to say that, you know, better to stick with the devil you know. I mean, it's an astonishing thing, isn't it? But there's been Valentine Lowe. He's a very, very good royal man, and he said that he spoke to several people. One, and you just have to see whether they've sort of said something that makes them look outstanding. George Osborne has done that, and Nick Clegg, Michael Gove. These are all people they think might have let through this comment that the late Queen made. David Cameron, who actually didn't tell anybody, he apparently knew it but didn't tell anyone.
Well, he said she was so careful never to express a political view, but he always sensed that, like most of her subjects, she thought that European cooperation was necessary and important, but the institutions of the EU can sometimes be infuriating. In this extract, serialised by the Times, one Buckingham Palace insider said that while the Queen could be frustrated by Brussels bureaucracy, she saw the EU as part of the post-war settlement, marking an era of cooperation after 2 world wars. I mean, it is fascinating what you're saying there, especially when it comes to different views the Queen had. We know she's someone who felt strongly about Scottish independence and was happy when that referendum didn't happen because David Cameron let that slip. But as you say, for such a long time, she was essentially the impartial sovereign, perhaps unlike her son.
Yes. Well, she was cross with him if ever he said something political, which he tended to do from time to time. I mean, she felt that that was absolutely the wrong thing to do, but perhaps it was so passionate for her that she felt she had to say something. She was almost bursting. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, that she could do that. And in 2016, those 3 months she obviously thought were extremely important, and that you can't actually go ahead with something like this. It's very interesting, isn't it? And I can't really believe it. I think sometimes people can actually pick up these things and turn them into something that wasn't there, except that Valentine is so good and such a responsible writer and journalist that I do. But I think it's going to have a very long story, isn't it? Because it says as well, isn't it? No one, not even closest advisors, knew. But obviously they did, because they've remembered it for all this time. So it's very difficult, isn't it? And Boris Johnson, he actually tried to put off Parliament, and she was very cross with him. And that's 2019. She was still against
the prorogation of Parliament, yeah.
Yes, and so all these superior political people were saying things that you don't know really, do you? I mean, I think when someone is passed away and they haven't wanted to be known that they've actually told things like this or control the country. She was never like that. I mean, they did say that she was very open when she was people about friends and people she knew, members of the royal family. She would be very, very open about that. But it's difficult to imagine that she would be open about this enormous decision.
And very big hot potato politically. Very interesting to talk to you, Angela. Thank you, Angela Levin there. Excuse me, royal biographer and commentator. Dan in Kent has said, I'd say the late Queen was a Remainer. Doesn't mean she liked the EU. That's a very good point, Dan, and I'm someone who voted Remain back in the day. I certainly had no great love for the EU, it must be said. Diane in Durham says, we had an England flag painted on a mini roundabout 3 years or so for the football, no issues. I managed to drive around it every day without having an accident, just signalling their virtue. Maybe they just signal their way off the roundabout, as so few people seem to do, although I'm sure Diane is a safe driver, he always does that. Just on voice notes, Jules has been in touch. He says, change the producer Cardi piece, stop saying only 1 minute voice notes, how dare he? It's getting very annoying now. Well, it's actually not the producer, it's Tech Up Dave who has to deal with them all. He listens to all of your voice notes and we love having them coming through, and thank you so much for them. The point is that because there are quite a few of them, we want to give everybody a chance. We want to listen to them before they go out in air to make sure they're legally okay to go, which Tech Up Dave does very, very well. But if they're, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes or whatever, well, that's just too long, I'm afraid, and then he becomes Tetchy Up Dave, and we don't like that. And by the way, if we get rid of Tech Up Dave, the station will collapse. He is almost literally the backbone of this station. Me, I'm not sure I'm that necessary. Tech Up Dave, can't get rid of him.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... Those... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell with you for the next half an hour. Andy, tomorrow between 10 and 1 we'll be talking to the Conservatives, hopefully talking to the government as well, not confirmed yet, but we certainly hope to get some answers, especially about the Bell Hotel. You want to talk about it today, got voice notes, calls, texts and tweets still coming in. Do let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000, that big and dramatic opinion from the Court of Appeal yesterday. What happens politically? We'll talk to Theo Usherwood in just a moment. We'll get your opinions too. We'll also be talking about the St George's flag. Lots of people want to talk about that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note. Less than a minute, please. Yes, less than a minute, please. Otherwise, Tetchy up Dave gets tetchy. He's not too happy about that. It was touchy about that, and you can send me a voice note. As I say, we'll play those out. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on the same number, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss here on Talk. On the voice notes, Shane in Sydney says, I love your show and tech up Dave. I missed the chocolate taste test. I missed the chocolate taste test as well, but it was Phil Dave, the weekend editor, who killed all the fun. He killed the cat of the week as well, and the biscuit breakdown. Dreadful. Dave in Dorset says, perhaps you talking less would allow others to get a word in. Says Dave with a wink emoji. Well, one person who will get a word in is Theo Usherwood, who is a political commentator. Theo, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Very good afternoon to you, Peter. Great to be with you.
We talked about the legal fallout from the Bell Hotel. What do you think the political fallout is?
Well, we've already seen a poll out today, haven't we, which has given Reform a 15-point lead over Labour. Now, that's a bit of an outlier, but it gives you an indication, I think, of where things are going.
And consistent in polls. OK, maybe not just quite as big a lead, but there have been over 70 polls that have put Reform ahead, 15 points ahead of Labour.
There was a big one out earlier this week from YouGov, which put the gap at 8 points, Labour on 20, Reform on 28. So the direction of travel is clear. I'm not saying that necessarily this poll is instructive of, to the finer, percentage points as every poll, but it gives you a clear indication of where this is heading. Politically, and the pressure that is on Keir Starmer, for the Home Office to go to the Court of Appeal and use the European Convention on Human Rights as a defence in its appeal against an original High Court ruling to close the hotel is perhaps the worst political look imaginable for Keir Starmer right now. But nevertheless, they decided to go ahead with that course of action because there was a calculation in the Home Office that for it to go, for them to allow the High Court ruling to stand, for the Bell Hotel to close, and then at the moment, at least, the plan is for migrants at the hotel. Indeed, if there were to be other hotels that were closed as a result of the precedent set by that High Court ruling, you'd see potentially dozens of, if not scores of hotels across the country shut. The only backup plan the government have at the moment is that those migrants go into houses of multiple occupancy and then they're dotted around the country, and it becomes a much harder operation to manage, and that's why they decided to take the course of action that they decided to appeal the judgment and to try and keep the hotels open. Now, many of your listeners indeed will, and you will think about what Nigel Farage has been saying during the week and his promise at that aircraft hangar in Oxfordshire on Tuesday would support a move that instead of the government saying, well, let's have houses of multiple occupancy, what about converting a military base into a detention camp? Therefore, you can keep these migrants safe, even if it is not the most hospitable or humane conditions.
I just want to play the clip from Angela Eagle as well, Dame Angela Eagle, who is the Immigration Minister. This is what the government have been saying about the judgment in regard to the Bell Hotel.
Well, nobody wants to close the Bell Hotel and all other asylum hotels more than me, and we have pledged that we are going to do that by the end of the Parliament. Today's judgment allows us to do it in a planned and managed way so that we can get the system running and make sure that we can exit hotels for once and for all.
Dame Angela Eagle there, the Immigration Minister. A note of scepticism, I think, when she said that she wants to do it in a planned and managed way and that no one wants to close them more than her. The obvious response to that would be, well, if you want to close them, why don't you close them? You're the government with a huge majority. You are a Home Office Minister. You are the Immigration Minister. You can do this. And it just seems that whilst the government say they want to close them, if they can't close one because a court tells them to, how are they going to close 200 in the next 3.5 to 4 years?
Yeah, and of course the numbers are going in completely the opposite direction. So you have this pledge to close all of the government that Labour came in on, elected back in July of last year, to close all the hotels. But we've had a record number of asylum claims, 110,000 in the last 12 months. You've got a situation where in the first 6 months of this year compared to the first 6 months of last year, 2024, the number of migrants crossing the English Channel is up 48%. Yes, the government Labour inherited a very dire state of affairs when it came to firstly the number of people crossing the English Channel, and then the situation when it comes to accommodating them. But the situation has got worse, because in the second day of Keir Starmer's tenure as Prime Minister, he decided to scrap the Rwanda scheme. Now, of course, the Rwanda scheme couldn't work because we remain within the parameters of the European Convention on Human Rights. Indeed, it was the European Convention on Human Rights that the Home Office used in its appeal at the Court of Appeal to keep the Bell Hotel open. And therefore, Nigel Farage, he is correct to say, when he says on Tuesday that if he wants to deal with this problem effectively and to get to the bottom of it, and to get to a situation where the number of people stop crossing the English Channel because there's an effective deterrent, then the way to do that is to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. But that is very difficult to do, not least because it is ingrained into every part of British law, and including, of course, the Good Friday Peace Agreement. So Nigel Farage, has a plan, but he needs to get that plan, if he is to become Prime Minister, into action, and that is no mean feat.
Just before you go, Theo, I just want to ask you about the Queen and these allegations in a new book by Valentine Lowe of the Times that she was a Remainer. What do you make of that?
Well, of course, the story during the referendum campaign was that she supported Brexit. I think the quote that Valentine Lowe got from a courtier was that her view, the Queen's view, the late Queen's view, was better the devil and that's why she made the argument that apparently, according to Valentine, that that we should remain within the European Union. Valentine's a very experienced, a well-seasoned, very experienced, knows the royal beat better than anyone. So I'm sure it's a very well-sourced. It'll be a very well-sourced story. But it is. What the Queen thought about Brexit, I think, is going to be debated into the future for many years to come.
Okay, Theo. Just before you go, actually, Sonia has been in touch. Says, "Hi, Cardi P. I love Theo's haircut. He looks like a member of a boy band." Sorry,
I've sort of been rushing around.
No, I think your hair looks fine. Which boy band would you most like to be a member of, Theo? Are you sort of One Direction man yourself? More New Kids on the Block? Old Kids on the Block we could both be a member of.
I'd love to. Decrepit middle-aged men on the block. Yeah.
Middle-aged men on the block. We can join that one ourselves. Theo, thank you very much. That's Theo Usherwood, political commentator there. This text also says, "I love Theo's haircut. He looks like a member of a boy band." Anyway, I just wanted to message in support of Tech Op Dave, as he's been given a hard time today. Keep going, Dave, and I hope this takes less than a minute to read out. I was going to message about the horrendous government, but non-swear words fail me. She says, Molly says, "Great show, mate. What do you think of our late great Queen? Would think of banning the flag of our once proud nation?" Well, interestingly, a viewer has messaged me in to make me aware of what's happened in Northern Ireland. This is Newry and Mourne police service of Northern Ireland. You say police in Newry, this is a city in Northern Ireland, police in Newry are investigating a report of numerous pride flags which were removed from lampposts in Hill Street in Newry between 10 o'clock on Friday and 7 o'clock on Saturday. These flags were placed for the pride celebration in Newry on Saturday. The matter is being treated as a homophobic hate crime. A homophobic hate crime to take down flags. If anyone witnessed removing the flags, blah, 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 get in touch. a homophobic hate crime seriously. This viewer says Newry police have plenty to be getting on with. And this viewer says, my own hometown was plastered from one end to the other last weekend with Palestine flags to mark a pro-Gaza, anti-Israel and anti-Zionist march and rally. 30 large flags which were left up until local people started removing them overnight. To avoid being attacked was the erection of the flags a hate crime towards Jewish people. This is getting ridiculous now. If the pride flags were put up for an event, that's fine, but removing them is not a crime. Attacking people physically or verbally in the parade would be a crime. Police need to get a grip. So thank you. If you ever see these things, if you see things happening in your community that you think we should be talking about, always get in touch. I love hearing from people, and we'll hear from more people after the break. We've got voice notes, we've got phone calls ready to go. Lots to discuss. Stay with us.
who effectively told us they are scared for their children's safety in the area, and they are worried about what the next steps are and what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't quite know the ramifications of today's hearing yet. We get to see how it progresses and what that appeal might mean for the future. But I mean, the fact the government is allowed to appeal, that could have, if that wasn't the case, then it would effectively tear apart the whole hotel system and leave the whole asylum hotel system in tatters.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Graham's been in touch on Twitter and says, Peter, considering the current public feeling, shouldn't the King make a statement about flying the St George's Cross or Union flag? Leslie and Torbay on text, loving your programme today. Heard last week the government is threatening landlords with national insurance. Is this so those landlords who make little money will be forced to sell and the government can purchase these properties for immigrants? HMOs, just a thought. Michelle says HMOs should be out of the question. That's houses of multiple occupancy. They're dangerous enough in the hotels. They should have a secure camp with basic rations, nothing more. Why are they treated like kings while our people suffer? Never mind the waffle. Why is no one being held to account? It's disgusting. I'm furious, says Michelle. John says, afternoon Peter, how about keeping the migrants locked into these hotels with the perimeter being patrolled? That would be the same as old Army and RAF bases. Let's hear a voice note from Laura.
Hi Peter. The judgment yesterday, I know that it's not finished, but I feel very strongly that those judges are too affiliated with the Labour Party, and maybe they're not members at the moment, but it's so obviously a stitch up, one big stitch up. and it's not going to make a blind bit of difference what we think. And this, as I keep saying on the radio, on talk radio, people have got to understand that this is part of a long-term plan to completely obliterate Britain and its Britishness. Great show.
Laura, thank you. Well, Lord Justice Bean, as you say, I think he's the only one of the 3 judges who has ever been a member of the Labour Party. He isn't anymore, but factually he was a member. He was indeed chairman of the Fabian Society in 1989-90 and was a member of the Labour Party for 28 years. Let's take a final voice note now from Frank.
Hi, Peter. It's Frank from Bingling, West Yorkshire. I heard a left-wing political commentator yesterday on another radio show when talking about flags. And she came out with a statement that to me epitomises the current situation we're in with illegal migration and flags. And she said, I don't mind people displaying Union flags and St George Crosses flags in quintessential British towns like Henley. And that phrase to me says it all. Many of us are losing our quintessential British towns. And yet the people who make the decisions, they still live in them. And that's why the majority of people are now yearning to go back and have quintessential British towns. Cheers, Peter. Thank you.
Frank, thank you for that. Francis in Manchester has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Francis, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
It's just something that's crossed my mind. Are these hotels that are full hampering coach companies from booking holidays?
Well, if people can't have somewhere to stay and if the prices go up, well, then that's going to be difficult. We know in Bournemouth, certainly, that there are people who can't get into hotels there and also don't want to go because there are so many asylum seekers there.
Yeah, I just wondered if it's causing coach companies problems, but they've not spoken out about it.
Well, it's really interesting you should mention that. I'm sure there are an awful lot of businesses that are being affected by a lot of this. They don't want to speak out because they don't want to be seen as political. Francis, great point. Thanks very much for it. Mark's in Lincolnshire and has given me a ring. Mark, you're on the air. What would you like to say?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi, Mark.
Sorry, man. I'm pulling my hair out with cats at the minute. Good God. Feeding time, you know what it's like. One wants to be hand-fed, the other one keeps trying to steal everybody else's food, and I'm like, oh my God.
All right, okay, Mark. Tell us about your point. What would you like to say?
My point is that the whole Bellows Health thing. I mean, you played was it a voice message there from Lucy, wasn't it, I think? She was talking about, you know, this is like some part of plan or something.
Yeah, Laura said that, yeah.
Laura, that's it. Yeah, she has actually got a point. I pretty much agree with what she's saying there. You don't get this kind of uniformity across the entire Western world, because if you look at what happens, you had it under the last US government as well with Biden, you know, just this complete open border thing, you know, this complete flooding, complete demographic changes, all the rest of it. You don't get that completely across the entire West without it being part of something. You know, it wouldn't make sense any other way, to be honest. But on
is it just how the world is working at the moment? Is there perhaps not necessarily a plan here? It's just the way it's actually because of the chaos what's happening.
No, not particularly, Peter, because when you look at it, it's all to do with the left-wing groupthink at the end of the day, whether it's a form of communism, whether it's a form of some weird mix of globalism and communism, I don't really know. But there's definitely something in play, because all this stuff, we've had, you know, people are moving more. People are leaving these countries for all these reasons and all this garbage that they come out with. But the reality is, it's only because of that groupthink and this ideological push that has allowed us to start letting them into the country across Europe, across the Western world, as I say. You know, because it's not just here. It happens in Australia, New Zealand, like, say, the US, Canada. It's literally every country in the West. So, to me, that has to be part of something bigger, because, as I say, what would happen normally, yes, you would have, if, let's say there's a massive push of immigration, you know, people are moving more than they ever used to because it's so much easier, etc. But that doesn't mean you have to let them into your country, does it?
Well, that is absolutely true, Mark, and that is part of the fundamental argument I have with this. When they say, "Oh, people want to come here," it's like, well, there are loads of places I wouldn't mind living in America, wouldn't mind living in Australia necessarily, but it doesn't mean I should be allowed to do that. It doesn't mean that those countries simply have to say, right, well, you can come here and you can do what you want. Mark, thanks for your call. Just before the end of the programme, Grace is in London. Grace, you're the final call today. What would you like to say?
Very many things, but I'll first of all say, since you used the subheading cross words, I just want to say again, although I have said it before, so I apologise, I'm repeating myself, the reason we have a cross is that Jesus died on a cross. Now, we want to look at people who live elsewhere or come from elsewhere and think, those are terrible people. We're great people. Actually, all people, though to very differing extents, admittedly, all of us have done stuff that's wrong, and that is the reason that there is a cross on our flag. We all of us.
Yeah, I mean that's true, Grace, and I'm not taking any truck with that. But the point is that there are a lot of people who are coming to this country. Not all of them, but they're coming and would do us harm and haven't been vetted coming into this country, and that's something that a lot of people feel very, very strongly about. I'm not saying I don't believe in forgiveness, redemption, whatever, but it would be useful to know where those people had come from and if they'd been convicted of crimes.
I think it would be good for there to be a bit more nuance, because I think the reality is that most people recognise that some people absolutely shouldn't be coming and some people do have a good reason, but we can all get a little bit confused because it's such a complex situation that trying to distinguish on, I mean, I don't know what the proportions are of people who come with good reasons and people who don't, but we can end up thinking we're scared of all of them and they're all terrible.
Well, there are some people, Grace, who think, you know, all immigration is bad. There's some people who want net zero migration or just zero migration. I must say I'm someone who believes there's good immigration and there's bad immigration. I think if there are people who want to come here and contribute to our economy and we have the capacity to take them, that's fine. But there are some who, and there are too many who are coming, who we don't have the capacity to take. Our infrastructure is creaking.
Yeah, I think there's certainly problems with our infrastructure. I think that if you look at the numbers in terms of how money is spent in the country, actually there's an awful lot more than the 7 billion spent on migration that's spent on other things. So I don't think that the people in small boats are actually the root of those problems that we have with the NHS and such like.
I think it's a big, complicated argument, and I think you've made some really good points, as you often do. Grace, thank you. That's Grace in London there. I want to thank the top team behind the glass, not least Tech Up Dave, who is a legend. He has been the technical operator, unsurprisingly. Producer has been Cal Duffy. Tommy Bateson's been the assistant producer. Chris Jacobs set up the programme as the setup producer. The vision mixers have been Davis Fang and Luke Vincent. The video editor, Ayabel Farras, and the weekend editor, Dean Spencer. Thank you so much for your company. Today, I am back tomorrow between 10 and 1, and I'm doing Drive all week as well between 4 and 7, so plenty to talk about this week. And as I say, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Jonathan Gullis is here with breakfast. I'll be here mid-morning, 10 o'clock. See you tomorrow.
My message to people smugglers